And so when you do allocate reserves, you essentially allocate to the fastest growing, not necessarily the best long-term sustainable capital or value drivers.
Well, that's for sure. When you have limited reserves from a seed or smaller fund, you put it all in your fastest growing companies, like 100%. There's only one criterion: triple digits growth, double digits per month. That's it. What do they do again? SaaS for haircuts? I'm in.
I think your statement is possibly true at the seed level, which is not where we play, right?
100%. I think between B and C, you have a lot more to play with.
Exactly. I mean, even the truth is this. What I say to people is, we do it when you have product market fit. Once you have product market fit and early acceleration, if you get what you underwrite for the first 2 years after the investment, you're probably going to make money. And if you don't, you're going to struggle. I mean, we've done that. I think I shared with you before, is that when I look back 2 years in, right, if they're at or within 25% of the underwrite plan, our probability of making a 5x goes from 30% to 70%, right? At the product market fit stage, right, I think what you said is not true. In other words, you can, in fact, tell your best, quote unquote, your best deals. Not with 100% certainty. I would have said 70%, and I'll come back to that. I'm not sure it is 70 anymore. So that is when reserve allocation gets tricky, because you have, one, the incentive to put a lot on the good deals. On the other hand, there is some value in having capital, even to defend your mediocre deals with small amounts of money, where financings get tough, because you can impact, it's not going to change your life, but you can take a 0.5x to a 2.5x by nurturing it along. I mean, and finding a way to make a big difference and avoid a big hole in the fund. So there is some value in having some capital there, but the vast bulk of it should go into winners.
Rory, have you ever had a pay-to-play work out? I was doing a deal the other day and the lawyer's like, hey, you could lose your rights. And so in a pay-to-play, you could get fucked. And I basically responded and I said, I've spoken to many of the greats and all of them have told me very simply that in pay-to-plays, when they've participated, it hasn't worked well. Has it ever worked well for you?
First of all, it never works well. I mean, my first rule of thumb is this. When you find yourself going to look at the legal documents in a venture deal, you're probably on your way to losing money. Right. So the minute you start down this road, you've made a mistake. So first of all, let's start with that. So you definitely go from if your chance of a good outcome on a normal deal is 30, 40%, a great outcome is 30%, you're definitely going to a different place. Whenever you're in this kind of trouble, your probability of making big money is very low. Famous example, however, it's worth pointing out, he died last week, FedEx. There was a down round in FedEx, like 6 or 7 rounds in. And I think Weispeck and Greer, which is the antecedent of Lightspeed, played pretty aggressively there and made out like bandits. So that is an example of a down round in a network business where it was the tipping point round and the people who played made out like bandits. So it can work occasionally. But you're right. The statistical rule when you're dealing with these trouble situations is you're probably not playing for the likelihood of a home run win is low. It's not zero. It's low, right? But I think, so what you're typically doing with a small amount, and that's why it should be a small amount of money, is you're saying, can I manage this thing to get it to a decent exit versus just letting it implode and blow up?
The second startup I worked at, Harry, had a pay to play and it IPO'd.
Which one?
Unfortunately went bankrupt between that round and the IPO. So
yeah.
Everyone lost all their money. So you could argue whether it worked out for the VCs, not only the ones that did the bankruptcy round, but it did work. Like it bridged them to the IPO, but they did have to go bankrupt.